My parents spent more than $250,000 on my sister's college education. And when it was my turn, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said something I will never forget. He said, "You're smart, Emma, but you're not the one worth investing in." That sentence didn't just break my heart. It rewrote my entire life. 4 years later, those same parents sat in the front row of a graduation ceremony with 3,000 people in the audience. They had flowers, they had cameras ready, they had tears of pride in their eyes. But they weren't there for me. They were there for my sister, the daughter they believed would make the family proud, the daughter they spent $250,000 on. What they didn't know was that in just a few minutes, the dean would step up to the podium, adjust the microphone, and say a name they never expected to hear. My name. And in that moment, their entire world would stop. But the truth is, the real story isn't about that stage. It's about what happened in the 4 years before it. The years when I was eating instant ramen in a tiny rented room, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, while my sister posted photos from beach vacations and luxury dorm rooms my parents paid for. Here's the question that kept me awake through all those nights. What do you do when the people who are supposed to believe in you the most decide you're not worth the investment? If stories about family betrayal, karma, and second chances mean something to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Because what happened at that graduation is something my parents still haven't fully recovered from. And trust me, the moment they realized what I had done was far more painful than anything I could have ever said. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 22 years old. And for most of my life, I grew up believing something was wrong with me. Not because anyone said it directly, not at first, but because of the small things, the quiet things, the things families do when they think no one is paying attention. My sister Olivia and I were only 2 years apart, but in my parents' eyes, we lived in completely different worlds. Olivia was the golden child. She was confident, outgoing, the kind of person who could walk into a room and have everyone smiling within 5 minutes. My parents loved that about her. They told everyone about her. At family dinners, my father would lean back in his chair and say things like, "Olivia's going to do big things someday," or "That girl has real potential." And every time he said it, my mother would smile proudly. I would sit there quietly waiting to hear my name too, but it rarely came. When Olivia turned 16, my parents surprised her with a brand new car in the driveway, a silver Toyota with a giant red bow on the hood. The whole neighborhood came outside to watch her reaction. She screamed. She cried. My parents hugged her while my father filmed everything on his phone. That same year, I received my first laptop for school. It was Olivia's old one. The battery only lasted about 40 minutes. The screen had a faint crack across the corner. When I asked my mom if maybe I could get a new one too, she smiled gently and said, "Honey, you know money doesn't grow on trees." And I believed her. I believed all of it. But over the years, the pattern became impossible to ignore. When Olivia went to Spain for a summer exchange program, my parents paid for everything. When I asked if I could attend a science camp 2 states away, my dad said it wasn't practical. When Olivia needed help with rent during her senior year of high school, they wrote the check the same day. When I needed money for textbooks, I got a lecture about responsibility. For a long time, I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was being dramatic, that maybe families were just like this. But everything changed. The spring, we both received our college acceptance letters. The envelopes arrived on the same afternoon. Olivia opened hers first. She had been accepted to Westbridge University, a private school with ivy-covered buildings, famous alumni, and a price tag of more than $60,000 a year. My parents were ecstatic. My father stood up and clapped. My mom wiped tears from her eyes. Olivia jumped up and down in the kitchen like she had just won the lottery. Then it was my turn. I opened my envelope slowly. North Valley State University, a good public school, strong programs, solid reputation, but not nearly as glamorous as Westbridge. That night, my father called a family meeting in the living room. I remember the way he sat in his chair, calm, serious, like he was about to present a business decision. "Emma, Olivia," he said, "we need to talk about college finances." Olivia sat forward immediately, already smiling. I felt a knot form in my stomach. My father turned to Olivia first. "We're going to cover your tuition at Westbridge. Room and board, books, everything." Olivia gasped with excitement. My mother reached over and squeezed her hand. Then my father looked at me, and the tone in the room changed. "Emma," he said slowly, "we've decided you'll need to handle college on your own." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. I blinked. I looked at my mom. She stared down at her hands. I looked back at my father. "What do you mean? On my own?" He sighed, the way adults sigh when they think a conversation should be obvious. "Your sister's education is a significant investment. Westbridge will open doors for her, connections, opportunities." Then he paused and said the sentence that would echo in my mind for the next 4 years. "Investments only make sense when there's a strong return. You're smart, Emma, but Olivia is the one with the future." The room went completely silent. I waited for my mother to interrupt, for someone to say this was a misunderstanding, but no one did. Olivia was already texting someone about Westbridge. My mother avoided my eyes, and my father simply leaned back in his chair, like the decision had already been finalized. That was the moment I realized something painful. In my parents' eyes, I wasn't their daughter. I was a financial risk they had decided not to take. What they didn't realize was that their decision that night would push me onto a path none of us could have imagined. And 4 years later, they would be sitting in the front row of a graduation ceremony, finally forced to see the daughter they had overlooked for most of her life. The night after that conversation, I went back to my room and closed the door quietly. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt. It did, but something about the way my father had said those words, so calmly, so confidently, made the situation feel final, like a contract had been signed, and I had simply been left out of the deal. I sat on the edge of my bed with a notebook and started doing math. North Valley State University cost about $25,000 a year. 4 years meant $100,000. My savings from part-time jobs, $2,087. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and typed the only phrase that made sense. Full scholarships for independent students. That search changed everything. The truth was simple. If my parents weren't going to invest in me, I would have to invest in myself. That summer, before college, became the most organized 3 months of my life. I filled an entire notebook with plans. Job number 1, morning shift at a campus coffee shop, 5 in the morning to 8. Job number 2, weekend cleaning crew for dormitories. Not glamorous, but steady pay. Job number 3, library assistant during the evenings. By the time classes started, my schedule looked less like a college life and more like military training. Wake up at 4:30, work at the cafe by 5. Classes from 9 until mid-afternoon. Library shift in the evening, study until midnight. Sleep, repeat. Most nights I slept 4 hours, sometimes less. Meanwhile, Olivia's college life looked very different. Her Instagram became a highlight reel of everything I wasn't experiencing. Beach trips with friends, football games under stadium lights, dinner parties at restaurants. My entire weekly grocery budget couldn't cover. Every now and then, my mother would send a message. "How are your classes going?" I would answer politely, "Good, busy." But there were certain conversations that never happened. No one ever asked if I was tired. No one asked if I was struggling. And no one asked how I was paying for everything. Thanksgiving, during my freshman year, was when something inside me finally shifted. I couldn't afford a plane ticket home, so I stayed in my tiny rented room near campus. The room was barely bigger than a walk-in closet. One narrow bed, one desk, a window that looked directly at a brick wall. I heated up a cup of instant noodles and called home. My mom answered. Her voice sounded distracted, like she was in the middle of something. "Hi, honey. Happy Thanksgiving." "Happy Thanksgiving," I said. I could hear laughter in the background, plates clinking, the sounds of a full family dinner. "Is Dad there?" I asked. There was a pause. Then I heard my father's voice in the distance. Tell her I'm busy. The words were quiet, but they were clear. My mother returned to the phone quickly. Your father's helping Olivia with something right now. It's okay, I said. I should get back to studying anyway. We said goodbye. I hung up the phone. Then, without thinking, I opened social media. The first photo on my screen was posted only minutes earlier. My parents and Olivia, sitting around the Thanksgiving table. Candles lit, smiling faces. Perfect. The caption read, "Grateful for family." I looked closer at the table. 3 plates, 3 chairs. There wasn't even an empty seat for me. I sat there for a long time, staring at that picture. And something strange happened. The pain that had followed me for years started to fade, not because the situation had improved, but because for the first time, I understood something clearly. I wasn't going to spend my life trying to earn a place at that table anymore. If they couldn't see my worth, I would build a life where their approval didn't matter. That decision changed the way I approached everything. I studied harder, worked harder, and slowly, semester by semester, my grades began to stand out. By the end of my first year, my GPA was a perfect 4.0. But the moment that would change my life forever didn't happen in a classroom. It happened during a quiet afternoon in the economics building, when one professor picked up my essay and decided to read it twice. The afternoon that changed my life started like any other. I was sitting in the economics building, 3rd floor, near a tall window that overlooked the campus courtyard. Most students had already gone home for the day. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens on a college campus when the rush of classes is over and the night hasn't started yet. I was reviewing notes for an upcoming exam when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around. Professor Daniel Harris was standing there, holding a stack of papers. He had been teaching economics at North Valley State for nearly 30 years. Students respected him, but they also feared him. His classes were known for being extremely difficult. He looked down at the paper in his hand. Then he looked back at me. "Emma Carter?" he asked. "Yes, sir." He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "This essay," he said, tapping the paper lightly, "is yours, correct?" I nodded. It was an assignment analyzing economic mobility, an opportunity in modern America. I had spent 3 nights writing it between work shifts. Professor Harris adjusted his glasses and studied me carefully. "In 25 years of teaching," he said slowly, "I have rarely seen an undergraduate paper this thoughtful." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Most professors returned assignments with a simple grade, maybe a short comment. But Professor Harris kept speaking. "You don't just understand the theory," he said. "You understand the human side of it." He paused. "Where did you learn to write like this?" I hesitated. "No special place," I said. "Just public school." He watched me for another moment. Then he asked a question that surprised me. "What does your family do?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "My family doesn't really support my education." He didn't interrupt, so I told him the truth. About the college decision, about the 3 jobs, about the 4 hours of sleep. When I finished, Professor Harris leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. He didn't look shocked. He looked thoughtful. "Emma," he said quietly, "have you ever heard of the Caldwell Fellowship?" The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I shook my head. "It's one of the most competitive academic scholarships in the country," he explained. 20 students are selected nationwide every year. Full tuition, living stipend, research opportunities. My first reaction was almost laughter. 20 students, I said. "In the whole country." Professor Harris nodded. "That's correct." I stared at the table. People who won awards like that usually had perfect resumes, prestigious internships, parents who could open doors. "I don't think I'm the kind of student they're looking for," I said carefully. Professor Harris leaned forward. "They are looking for exceptional minds," he said. "And sometimes exceptional minds come from difficult places." Then he said something I had never heard from anyone in my family. "I believe you have a real chance." The application process was brutal. 8 essays, academic recommendations, a research proposal, and if you passed the first round, a national interview panel. For 3 months, the Caldwell Fellowship consumed my life. I wrote essays during lunch breaks, edited them after midnight, Professor Harris reviewed every draft, while my sister Olivia posted photos from ski trips and concerts. I spent my evenings surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups. Finally, in early September of my senior year, I received an email. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Out of 200 applicants, I had been selected as one of the top 30 finalists. The next step was the final interview. In Chicago, 800 miles away, I opened my banking app immediately. My balance was $812. A flight alone would cost almost half of that. A hotel would cost the rest. For a long time, I stared at the screen. 3 years of sacrifice, 3 years of work, and now the final step felt impossible. I was just about to close my laptop when someone knocked on my door. It was Maya, my closest friend on campus. She took one look at my face and said, "Emma, what happened?" I showed her the email. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. "Well," she said simply, "I guess you're going to Chicago." I shook my head. "I can't afford it." Maya crossed her arms. "You're not missing this opportunity because of money." She pulled out her phone and started searching. 10 seconds later, she looked up. "Overnight bus," she said. "Leaves Thursday night, arrives Friday morning." She turned the screen toward me. $52. I looked at the ticket price, then back at her. "You'd really do that for me?" Maya shrugged. "Emma, if you win this fellowship, your whole life changes." She paused, and I have a feeling something big is about to happen. What neither of us realized at that moment was just how right she was, because 2 weeks after that interview, I would receive an email that would quietly change everything, and eventually lead me straight to the one place my parents never expected to see me again. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at 6:42. I remember the exact time because I had just finished my shift at the campus coffee shop. The sky was still gray. Most of the campus was quiet. I was walking back to my apartment with a paper cup of coffee in my hand when my phone buzzed. The subject line read, "Caldwell Fellowship Final Decision." For a moment, I couldn't move. 3 years of work, 3 years of exhaustion, all leading to this one email. I opened it slowly. "Dear Emma Carter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a Caldwell Fellow for the class of 2025. I stopped walking. I read the sentence again, then again. 20 students in the entire country. And somehow, my name was on that list. The fellowship covered full tuition, $10,000 a year for living expenses. But there was something else written further down in the message, something I hadn't expected. Caldwell Fellows were allowed to transfer during their final year to any partner university in the program. Some of the best schools in the country were on that list, and one name stood out immediately: Westbridge University, my sister Olivia's school. I stared at the screen for a long time. The same school my parents had invested everything in for her. The same school they believed I could never afford. Now, I had the opportunity to walk onto that campus as a Caldwell Fellow. Not as someone they helped, but as someone who had earned her place. That night, I called Professor Harris. He sounded genuinely proud. "Emma," he said, "this is one of the most competitive fellowships in the country." Then he paused. "You know what this means, right? I could transfer to Westbridge." "That's right," he said. "And Caldwell Fellows graduating from partner schools are usually selected to give the commencement address." My breath caught slightly. "You mean the valedictorian speech?" "Exactly." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he added quietly, "You've worked for this opportunity. Don't let fear stop you now." I made my decision that same night. I would transfer, but I told no one in my family. Not my parents, not even Olivia. 3 months later, I arrived at Westbridge University with 2 suitcases and a Caldwell Fellowship badge pinned inside my backpack. The campus was exactly the way I remembered from Olivia's photos. Beautiful stone buildings, wide green lawns, students walking confidently between classes. Except this time, I wasn't looking at it through a screen. I was part of it. For the first few weeks, everything went smoothly. My classes were challenging, but exciting. My professors treated me like someone who belonged there, and my sister had no idea I was even on campus. But secrets rarely stay hidden forever. One afternoon, I was studying in the university library. The third floor had long rows of wooden tables and tall windows that filled the room with afternoon sunlight. I was halfway through a stack of research notes when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Emma. My heart stopped. I turned slowly. Olivia was standing there holding an iced coffee, staring at me like she had just seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I closed my notebook calmly. I transferred. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Transferred," she repeated. "How?" "Scholarship." The word hung in the air between us. Olivia blinked. Then she looked around the library, as if the walls themselves might explain the situation. "Mom and Dad didn't say anything about this," she said. "That's because they don't know." Her mouth fell open. "You mean they have no idea you're here?" I shook my head. "No idea." She stared at me for another moment. Then she grabbed her phone. "I need to call them." That phone call changed everything. The next morning, my phone rang for the first time in 3 years. My father's name appeared on the screen. I answered. His voice sounded tense. "Emma," he said, "your sister tells me you're at Westbridge." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" I paused, then asked the question that had been sitting quietly in my mind for years. "Did you ever ask?" Silence filled the line. Finally, he said, "We'll talk about this at graduation." Graduation. The word lingered in the air after the call ended. Because what my father didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that graduation day was going to reveal something far bigger than my transfer. And when that moment arrived, there would be 3,000 people in the audience to witness it. Graduation morning arrived with bright blue skies and warm sunlight across the Westbridge campus. By 9 o'clock, the stadium was already filling with families. 3,000 seats, slowly filled with proud parents, grandparents, and friends. Flowers everywhere. Cameras ready. Excited voices echoing across the stands. I arrived through a side entrance reserved for faculty and honors students. My graduation robe was the same black gown every student wore, but across my shoulders was a gold sash, and pinned near my collar was the small bronze medallion of the Caldwell Fellowship. Most people in the audience didn't know what that medal meant, but the university did. And in a few minutes, so would my parents. I took my seat in the front section near the stage. From where I sat, I could see the audience clearly, and there they were, my parents. Front row, exactly where I expected them to be. My father was adjusting the settings on his camera. My mother held a large bouquet of white roses in her lap. Both of them were smiling proudly, but not because of me. They were waiting for Olivia. A few rows behind me, I spotted my sister among the other graduates. She was laughing with friends, taking photos completely unaware of what was about to happen. The ceremony began with the usual speeches. The university president welcomed the crowd. Several professors spoke about the journey of the graduating class. Minutes stretched slowly. Then finally, the president returned to the microphone. And now he said, "It is my great honor to introduce this year's valedictorian." The word echoed through the stadium. Valedictorian. My heartbeat started to quicken. In addition to earning the highest academic honors, this student has demonstrated extraordinary resilience and dedication throughout her time here at Westbridge. In the audience, my father raised his camera. He pointed it towards the section where Olivia was sitting. He had no idea. "Please join me in welcoming this year's valedictorian." There was a brief pause. Then the president said my name, Emma Carter. For a split second, the stadium seemed frozen. Then I stood. 3,000 people turned their heads toward the stage. I walked forward slowly. My heels clicked softly against the wooden steps as I climbed toward the podium. And in the front row, I saw my parents' faces change. First confusion, then recognition, then something very close to shock. My father lowered his camera slowly. My mother's bouquet slipped sideways in her lap. Olivia had turned around in her seat, staring at the stage with wide eyes. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. The applause faded. The stadium grew quiet. I looked out across the crowd, 3,000 strangers, and 2 parents who were finally seeing me clearly for the first time. "Good morning," I began. My voice sounded steady, 4 years ago, someone told me something I will never forget. In the front row, my mother's hand slowly rose to her mouth. That person said I wasn't worth investing in. A ripple of quiet murmurs moved through the crowd. I continued. For a long time, I believed those words. I believed that maybe I simply wasn't the kind of person people place their hopes in. I paused, then spoke again. But life has a strange way of proving people wrong. I told them about the 3 jobs. The early mornings at the coffee shop. The long nights studying in quiet libraries. The holidays spent alone with instant noodles and borrowed textbooks. I didn't mention names. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply told the truth. And somewhere along the way, I said I learned something important. Your worth is not decided by the people who fail to see it. A quiet wave of emotion moved through the audience. To anyone who has ever been underestimated, you are not the opinion someone formed about you. You are the work you do when no one is watching. When I finished, the stadium erupted into applause. 3,000 people rose to their feet, a standing ovation. As I stepped down from the podium, I saw my parents walking toward me through the crowd. My father reached me first. His voice sounded unsteady. Emma, why didn't you tell us? I looked at him calmly. Did you ever ask? He had no answer. My mother stepped forward, tears already running down her cheeks. We didn't know, she whispered. I nodded gently. That's the problem, I said. You never wanted to know. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then my father finally said quietly, I was wrong. I studied his face. The confidence I remembered from years ago was gone. In its place was something else. Regret. I know, I replied. But some mistakes take a long time to understand. Behind them, the crowd continued celebrating. Graduates hugging their families. Photographs flashing. But for the first time in my life, my parents were standing in front of me with no excuses left. And somehow that moment felt less like revenge and more like freedom. If you step back and look at Emma's story from a distance, something interesting begins to appear. As someone who has spent many years studying family dynamics and human behavior, I can tell you this. Stories like Emma's are far more common than people think. In many families, there is often a golden child, and a child who quietly learns to survive on their own. Sometimes the difference isn't talent. Sometimes it isn't intelligence. Often it is simply where the expectations of the family were placed. What Emma's parents didn't understand at the time was that when you underestimate someone long enough, you don't destroy them. Sometimes you build them. Pressure creates resilience. Loneliness creates independence. And rejection can become the spark that forces someone to discover their own worth. Emma didn't succeed because her parents believed in her. She succeeded because she eventually stopped waiting for them to. And that is a powerful shift in any human life. Now I'm curious about you. If you had been in Emma's position, would you have forgiven your parents? Or would you have chosen distance and peace instead? Let me know in the comments. And if stories like this resonate with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because here, we share stories that remind us of something important. Sometimes the people who overlook you are the same people who later realize they were standing in the presence of someone extraordinary all along.